what we're covering today. The lab, if you want to download it, you can start looking through it. So they're down there listed on the lab handout. It's a PDF that starts off talking about ports, IP addresses, and network services. So basically, the class is designed to illustrate to kids, especially high school students, that IP address is kind of like an address of a street address of your house, and that all the doors and windows are kind of like the ports and protocols, the ways into and out of the house. So normally you go into a house by the front door, not by the window, but this is just an illustration. And where you see over here, you have ports 22 and port 3389 are SSH and RDP, remote desktop protocol. These are the ways in the front door of the system. This is assuming it's a desktop system. SSH for whatever on Linux. Port 25 for email, port 80 and 443, all of you should know those as well, web-based ports. Port 445 is a Microsoft SMB. Port 143 is IMAP. So these different ports, there's thousands and thousands of ports, 65,000 ports if you're using TCP. So each street address basically has all these ways in. A firewall is designed to restrict access to the property, essentially, right? So just like a fence or a wall around a house, it's designed to keep out unwanted traffic, unwanted people. What you do is, with firewalls, you typically poke a hole for the access you want to grant. So in this case, we're wanting to come in our lab on port 3389 remote desktop. So we poke a hole in the firewall for 3389 to let that through, where all the other attempts and port scans and hacking attempts are going to be blocked. Now, a hacker can still come through on an open port. If you have an open port, you open it typically to the internet, and unless you're using whitelists or scoping, which we will get into scoping on firewalls. But you have to be very specific about who you want to allow in, or just what IP ranges, or otherwise it's everyone when you poke a hole. So important concepts to cover here. We also talk about, before I get into the actual lab, I like to go through, and maybe you want to do this at the tail end of a separate class, about white hat hacker ethics. Let me bring up this form real quick. Where's my ethics form? Here we go. So let me zoom in a little bit. So this white hat hacker form is it's an agreement form that has a signature at the bottom. Of course, minors can't sign things legally, but we just like to go over these things and have them write on paper. I understand this, and I won't do bad stuff. So talks about things to do and not do on the range that we're concerned about, but also, more importantly, when they go home and they take this knowledge with them, we're just like cyber range is designed, or it's like a gun range. It's designed to keep the dangerous things, the bullets, within the confines of the range, so you're not hurting anything on the inside. That's what the cyber range is for too. So we're sending these kids home with this, arming them with this knowledge. We need to make sure they understand the best practices and the expectations, because otherwise kids are going to explore. I mean, how many of us have seen kids learn some new hacking tool and they go use it in the school or at home or somewhere else, or an airport? So this basically talks about not gaining unauthorized access, not to scan or deny access anywhere where they shouldn't. Don't use these tools to perform malicious actions. Especially don't use in this context, don't use scanning tools on networks that you don't own or not been granted explicit permission to. I say, just like an IP address is your house address, you can go around your own house and rattle all the doors and windows all you want. But if you walk up and down the street and rattle your neighbor's doors and windows, it may not be illegal, but someone's probably going to call the cops on you. So and in some states, a port scan, rattling those doors and windows, is considered prelude to attack, which does have legal ramifications and punishments and fines. So it's very important to set that best practice early on. Listen, go home, scan your Wi-Fi, scan your home network. You can see your Blu-ray players, your sister's iPad and phone, your parents' laptops. That's really cool stuff. But as soon as you go outside your home network, you need permission of that network to do these kind of scans. I often scan things here on network. Before I do, I always reach out to network admins and my network liaison and say, hey, I want to do a port scan of look at all our printers. And I'm like, okay, just so they know what's going on. I'll set off red flags. They see red flag coming from my building. They're going to want to know what's going on. They're going to talk to my boss. So important to drive that home to students, how to use this, how not to use it. So I just like to go over that real quick. Talk about ethics. Yeah.
We have a question with audience.
Yeah.
The document that you're looking at right now, is it available under a Creative Commons license so the instructors can modify it to their need?
Yes, it is. A good question. All of our stuff, oops, I grabbed the wrong screen. All of our stuff is, you see down at the bottom, by whoever wrote it, and Creative Commons with a link to the Creative Commons license. So absolutely, we publish all our stuff Creative Commons because we're trying to create a community of purpose on the cyber range. So a bunch of people doing the same thing together, and we're kind of building each other up. So absolutely, use this, reuse it. If you improve it, make it better, send it back to us. We'll put it back in our archives at making it better. Is that good? So the real thrust of this class, though, is to really touch on the basics of firewalls. I mean, what student wants to learn about, well, ACLs and permissions and ACL orders and scope? They're not going to want to know all this stuff unless they know how it applies to them in the context. So first, let's start off as a firewall lab, but just putting firewall in the title was, I think, a little off-putting. I found titles matter when I'm doing public community classes. I think I did a class on bash scripting and Linux, and no one showed up. And then we said, how to do hacker security using the command line, and then everyone shows up. So it was the same course, but context matters, and so it's a good way of driving the stuff home for kids. And then, so we want to get into the down and dirty of how hackers scan and attack you. You can't defend what you don't understand. So that's why this lab is designed for like a two-student team, a white hat and a black hat. One student gets to be the attacker, the black hat, and the other one gets to be the defender, the white hat. So it's a lot of fun. Kind of goes back to a lot of the TV shows and stuff they see. A little more exciting. Of course, it's not nearly as exciting as Hollywood hackery, but whatever. And then we also talk about how to block these hacker scans. Of course, how to plug these holes and keep safe in the airports. So we'll get into that. And I think, yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. I'll jump in, and Dom, if anything looks off, let me know. All right. So when you get into the at the end of this class, I'll give the registration code. You get dumped into our airport hackers workshop, and there's only one exercise environment. Also, I just wanted to do a quick poll. Dom, can you launch the poll, or do I need to?
I think you need to, but you'd like to create a poll?
No, I already created it. I'm not seeing it. All right, forget the poll. The basic poll was, and you can just do a raise of hands or yeses and nos. How many of you are fairly comfortable with Linux, working in Linux and teaching from Linux? If you can reply.
And tweaks. I was able to launch your poll, and we have some first answers. So
cool.
Give participants a couple minutes to complete.
And I did those anonymously, so no one will know. In the meanwhile, so I'm now over here in the lab. I'm going to go ahead and log in to, you'll see there's two virtual machines. There's a Kali.example.com, that's the primary machine. And then the target machine is a vulnerable Windows 7 target. This is a really good pen testing environment. This is not a part of any course that we have in the courseware. If you just go to provision and exercise environment, it's one of our dedicated exercise environments for doing pen testing, called a pen testing exercise environment. Kali plus vulnerable Windows, I think. So I'm going to click on Kali. I'm going to go ahead at the same time, flip tabs back here, and also log into our target Windows system. It should auto log in both of those systems. This is the activation window. We're using unlicensed Windows 7 because we're using it for teaching purposes, and Windows 7 is no longer supported, so that's what you have to do. So hit cancel here so it doesn't try to call home. And then on Linux, this is our new Kali Linux environment. Dom helped build this one out. Very nice looking Dom. So let's see. The first thing we normally have students do is get logged in. That's step 3.1 in our guide here. We talked about a lot of this stuff about the theory of it, resources required. So there's 3.1, get logged in. Black Hat, this is where the Black Hat student, the student that's on the Kali Linux, gets logged into the Kali system and gets logged in and looks at their own IP address. So you go over here to their own system and do a host lookup. It's kind of like you can also do NS lookup if you're more familiar with that, but that's been deprecated for decade or more. Host cali.example.com. This will be their own DNS. So this is their IP. We have them write down this IP just so it reinforces names go to IPs. And then the target system. Oops, can't spell. Is that font big enough, Don?
It would help if it was a bit slightly larger. That's great.
All right, cool. Host.target.example.com. And you'll notice that it actually expands to this larger DNS. This is a kind of a DNS space that we've set up to make each student environment unique. But this is actually their short host name, target.example.com and cali.example.com. So they write down those IP addresses. So we're connecting the concept of the machines, the IP addresses, and now we want to start looking at ports, of the machines. So before we do that, though, I have the white hat student jump over here to the Windows system and look at the firewall settings. So first thing they need to do is make sure the firewall is turned on. Start and then type firewall, and this is the simple firewall interface. Make sure you have the green check marks. Firewall rules don't matter if you don't turn it on. And then secondly, we're going to jump into the advanced firewall security. Oh, and one other thing, a step I missed back on, I think this is step on, I should follow my own directions here. Step 3.9 is looking at the Windows network location. This class is designed around this concept. If you just hit start and type sharing, this will pull up the network sharing interface. Right now I'm set to a public network, and that's a good thing. If I port scan the system right now, it's going to act like it's in a untrusted public network environment. And I'd like to show the kids this real quick, as opposed to a home network environment. If I switch to home and I go over here, go back to Cali, and this is what we're going to get to here in a second. I'm going to nmap scan without ping, no ping, the target.example.com. This is going to do a port scan of the system and with basically in home firewall mode. So there's home network location and public. And in home mode, you're going to see a lot more ports are open. That's so you can do file sharing and printer sharing at home without any restrictions. As soon as you see ports 135, 139, or 445 open, you know this is obviously a Windows system, and they've got all these other ports open too. It's 3389, there's the front door. So this system is wide open right now. That's why it's very important when you do go into public to at least make sure your system is shifted into public network mode. And the rest of this class is going to be in public network mode. So close that down and close this down. Yeah, public network, there we go. And as soon as I do that, I go back over here and do the same port scan again. You'll see it'll take a little bit longer for the common ports to time out. And there, now all I have is port 3389 open. Now this is considered secure by Microsoft. However, 3389 is the hacker target that hackers look for and scan for when you open up your laptop in the airport or in a coffee shop or McDonald's. This is what they're going to be looking for. This is a Windows system. I know what to attack. Or then they can start doing fingerprinting and enumeration and find out what your weaknesses are and attack the weaknesses and get in. So this is some dangerous stuff. In fact, before I go any further showing how to secure it, this is not in the lab, but I do like to show this for more advanced teachers or students or classes. If you want to do this, you can put this in the lab yourself. Bring up MSF console. I think you need to do a sudo MSF console. And this is the Metasploit framework console. This is one of the hacker tools of choice, along with Nmap for scanning enumeration, and MSF console for attacking and launching exploits, delivering payloads, all kinds of hackery. So let me see. Any questions before we go on, Tom? And be sure to, if you're not familiar with command line completion, I want to do search SEA tab. Use command line completion on Linux. That's it's hugely powerful. And if you don't use it, it's just more painful to use. That's what gets a lot of kids past this is scary part, is using command line. You don't even know how to spell these commands. You can just start typing them. SE tab. Oh, those are the commands I have available to me. SEA tab. There you go. Search. And what am I searching for? Max channels. channels. Oh boy, now I've done it. There's a few of them. Let's see. This is not in my script, so this is the part that's going to fail, right? The word 150s, and I can't grab it. Searching. I know it's a DOS attack. Oops, darn it. I have to relaunch it. Search. No channels in there. Let me see. Tell me if you see Max Channel ID, Dom. I can't remember the exact name of it. I think it's under DOS. There you go. There it is. Max Channel IDs. Another cool thing about using Linux. I want to mute. Hold on. Another cool thing about using Linux, you can kind of get past the intimidation factor. Is copy paste is so nice, especially if you have a mouse with a middle button or a scroll wheel. If I want to use this, I don't want to type all this out. I just double click copies and middle click pastes. Middle click paste. If you didn't see that, I need to say use space and then middle click. Boom. So there's no right click, copy, right click, paste, control C, none of that, just left click, middle click, very, very fast. So this is telling Metasploit I'm going to use this attack. This is a DOS attack in case you didn't see that further up here. It's under auxiliary DOS Windows RDP MS12020 max channel IDs. So this is going to attack the maximum number of channels that RDP can handle and crash the service. It's fairly innocuous, but this is the same kind of attack that hackers would use if they're attacking your network, your Windows network, and all your Windows admins don't know anything but GUI logins. They'll use this to take down the RDP service on all your servers, so you're unskilled sysadmins that don't know PowerShell and command line navigation basically can't even log into your domain controllers and your servers. So then they'll just keep relaunching this attack to debilitate them. You can also, there's other attacks. There's remote code execution. There is buffer overflows, blue screening, all kinds of attacks. This is just a less dangerous one. So I'm going to go ahead and show options. These are the options that need to be set for this attack to be valid. So our hosts, this is going to be the name or IP address of the remote host and the remote port. Someone want to guess as to what my remote host is going to be set to? Set our host. Go ahead and unmute. Our host equals what? Anyone? Bueller? Can they unmute themselves?
I just set the session to allow participants to unmute themselves.
All right, just to expedite things. Target.example.com. You can also put in an IP address here. No, space. There we go. I'm thinking bash. So I'm going to show options again. You use up and down command line history for seeing what you just typed. So there we go. Now ROS is set, port is set. I flip over here to Windows. Everything is still working fine. Everything's normal. As soon as I launch this attack, I say exploit, run it, boom, starts running it. I'll go over here and I'll see, nothing. Can't do anything. Okay, so RDP is now effectively locked. There's no way into this machine, which is really kind of scary because it's a cloud machine. Luckily, Windows after Windows, I think 2000, Windows has never been the most stable of operating systems. So services, IIS, and stuff like that would crash. Your entire web server would be down. So Microsoft got a clue. It's like, hey, if it goes down, we should probably auto restart it. So after about 60 seconds of me yammering, hopefully this will come back. But I'll just go ahead and reload this session in the web interface. This web interface, by the way, is a web front end to RDP. So it's trying RDP on the back end. As soon as RDP becomes available, it'll basically log back in. So this is a nice little exploit you can do. Again, this is copy this out. Anybody wants to see this? So again, this was sudo MFS console, then the attack itself. I like to add notes to my command line history. Then after you get in there, you do use this, and then set rhost to target.example.com, and then exploit. And that's a fun little way of showing this is how significant this is. People can take down your laptop, get into your laptop. So we're back up and going because Windows automatically restarted the servers. But if I continually scripted this and relaunched this attack, they would not be able to get back on their system. But this is not really a laptop. This is more simulating a server, because laptop, you're sitting at the machine. You don't need RDP. But the principle holds. They could attack and inject things and take over your system, install a keylogger and record your banking. Another reason why you never do banking in a public area like that, unless you're really sure what you're doing. You're using VPN. It's not recommended. All right, so I want to get back into the flow of the class. So this brings me down to step. We did that. Step 4.1. So let's go ahead and let's scan ourselves. This is where the black hat's going to start exploring a little bit. So black hat does a nmap, no ping. Actually, I think you could ping yourself, but I'll skip that. Kali.example.com. And it's not good to scan yourself from yourself, because when you do that, you're bypassing a lot of your firewall rules. But this just gives an idea of, okay, my system is running these two things. I'm running 22 for SSH and 3389 because actually this graphical desktop session is RDP session. Even though it's not Windows, we're running XRDP so we can get this GUI interface. So that's interesting. So now that I have done that, the black hat gets back on here if they haven't done this before and scans target.example.com. This is where they should see just their port 3389. Now, so the whole point of this part of the exercise is to show that even though you're in public network mode and this thing says it's safe, there's still this hole in the firewall, which makes this system vulnerable, especially if it hasn't been patched. So that's what we're going to get into, looking at the actual advanced firewall rules. In case you missed that, I'm going to start firewall. There's two firewall options: the basic firewall for like mom and pop and grandma users, and then there's this advanced firewall. This is where the actual firewall ACLs are controlled from. So we look at the inbound rules, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Don, this is PF. This is a packet filter. I think Microsoft stole this in Windows 2000 from Berkeley, from BSD. They took PF and they took the Berkeley TCP/IP stack, because I noticed that the ping time went from above 1 millisecond to sub-millisecond response time, because they all had to work on back then in the 2000s was early O's. Before the early O's was the Windows 95 TCP/IP stack. I think there was a commercial TCP/IP stack, but anyway, I digress. Anyway, you'll see there's hundreds of ACLs, firewall rules in here. We don't want to go searching for things, so we use this filter by group. Can you guys see all this stuff over here? These are all of the things we can filter by. We're just going to filter by remote desktop. Not remote desktop, remote FX. That's UDP based. We're looking at TCP based. So filter by remote desktop, and there's the one rule we want right there. Remote desktop TCP in. Double click on this. This brings up the properties of this ACL, remote desktop. Right now, it allows all connections. Be very careful. We have to be very, very careful in this part of the lab, because if we lock ourselves out, we lock ourselves out for good. And there's no way to fix this as an instructor unless you go back to the cyber range, stop the VMs, and reset them back to kind of factory settings, which will wipe out any work they've done on the system. So, and luckily, I've never had a student mess this up. So I tend to be the only one that messes up firewall rules, I guess. So we're going to allow the connection, but we're going to limit the scope. We need to do this because we're going to block the world from accessing RDP, but we're going to allow the cyber range infrastructure to get to it. And that's back over here on this screen. This is where it shows. Oops, I'm scrolling the wrong way. This is where it shows the IP blocks we need to allow. So we need to allow 10.1.00/20, 10.1.16.0/20, and 10.196.0/20. You can do this very carefully. Remote IP addresses, add. So we start off, and you guys will be doing the same thing. This is all included in the documentation. So, but very important to drive home. Stare at these for a second. Make sure you got all the dots there. Make sure everything looks good. I've taught firewall classes before virtualization, and literally had to stop the class, call the data center, hey, can you power cycle my teaching machine because I screwed it up. We've had several Virginia Tech and Cyber Rangers help us teach this class before. We've never had a mess up, surprisingly. I just cursed myself. 10.1.16.0, 10.1.16.0/20. /20 is the size of the network. This is a good opportunity to talk about CIDR notation and network size. So /20 as opposed to like a 255.255.255.0, which would be a /24. This is a /20, which is a 255.255.240.0. And if you're not comfortable with subnet netting, just look up some of the CIDR VSLR equivalency charts. There's some charts you can look up online that'll help you with that. And if people want to get into that, then you need to start getting into binary map. People talk about binary and bit mapping and bit masking. It's not a light topic, but it's not as scary as people think. And it also ties in with hex. Students learning hex because they need to be able to learn hex to be able to do some intrusion detection and forensics and type of stuff. So I'm going to stop talking here for a second. 10.1.0.0, 10.1.16.0, 10.1.96.0. Looks good, looks good, looks good. All right. As soon as I hit OK, if I broke it, my GUI goes away. Okay. I got lucky.
Hey,
all right.
Real quick,
yeah.
We have 5 minutes to the end of presentation, and
yep.
we also have a question from the audience. Where can they find the answer key for this lab?
Hit me up afterwards. You can drop me an email or message me. Give me your email address, and I'll send you a link to it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the Nmap. This is the last step, really. The Nmap one last time, and basically this will just take forever. That's when you know it worked, basically. There's a way of speeding it up. You can do a -T5, I think will really speed it up. That limits the amount to an aggressive time window per port. So instead of taking 1 second for thousands of ports, takes a few milliseconds for each scan. But this will come back negative, basically, which means that we've accomplished what we needed to do, which is securing the firewall ACLs on this target system. All right, questions? Other questions? I'm scrolling through the rest of the documentation, make sure I didn't miss anything. If you're teaching this, there's some good questions at the end. What did your scan show? How long did it take? How to break out of long-running commands, like say, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Control-C, teach how to break out of a long-running command. There's also some good class discussion points. If you were a hacker or defender, how would you use the knowledge of port scans to your advantage? Based on the scanning results, what are the pros and cons of turning off incoming 3389 firewall settings? So if you don't have a reason for anyone to ever use RDP to your laptop, block it. Don't allow it. And if all the machines on your local LAN belong to you, is your own network trustworthy? Why or why not? This is a really good topic because it drives home the concept of untrusted networks. All networks are untrusted networks. That if one machine on your home network gets hacked or is running a Chinese Blu-ray player that's exfiltrating password data, you can't trust most networks. You shouldn't. In fact, I don't trust any networks as trusted. So that's a good topics. And then there's some follow-up questions at the end and class discussion points, best practices, things like that.